We should just talk until it feels
We talked about just talking and just saying things.
Talking until it feels natural.
Carl is basically the path of least resistance for this interview because they were saying, "Oh, somebody, who do you want to do the interview?" And Carl is currently my landlord, essentially.
I'm not his landlord.
Well, but we should talk about our connection, which we haven't actually rehearsed, and I hope that we're going to remember because I honestly am not sure. Do you remember when we first met each other? I feel like I remember, but I can't quite. I'm not sure if it's the first time.
I think it was in Den Haag.
Yeah.
And I think I just walked up to you because I'm just very...
Well, somebody had said...
a very pleasant person, and I walk up to people and say hello.
Carl is, in fact, a very pleasant person, and I remember saying afterwards to somebody, it's just like the bullshit factor, the lead singer, frontman, ego bullshit factor that you get used to with musicians is not there in Carl. You know, like the shitty two egos grappling like stags in a nature documentary thing.
So let's talk about who does have that bullshit lead singer. We've been waiting a long time.
Yeah.
This is where we have to keep ourselves hidden.
Yeah, exactly.
We can't talk like we do when we're just hanging out.
No. So you're getting the gloves are on. You're getting them,
but
not the no holds barred version.
But you know, the one thing, I don't think I told you this, but the one thing I remember about when we toured together, because I really like the stage names, and I was amazed that you guys agreed to do it. And I remember seeing you the first night and just being like so bummed out. Like, oh fuck. Like, we have to do this for the next 2-3 weeks. We have to follow them. And for 2 days I was legitimately bummed out. And I thought you'll get through this. You know, we liked each other, so that helped.
That was a really, really fun tour. I want to say that was the first tour we ever did with a bus. So it felt really rock star, you know, like we were touring with you guys and we were in a bus and we'd been on tour for so long that your body is just playing the songs without you even trying to. You're just like, oh, wow, I appear to be playing a set.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So that part of it was really, really nice. I mean, that was like definitely, I would say, the most fun tour. Probably the most fun tour I've done, but if that's not true, it was definitely the most fun I've had with another band on tour.
That was, yeah. I think that's the coolest part about being in a band for me. You know, you make friends along the way, and you rock and roll community.
Yes, yeah. That's the best part about like festivals to me too, is that you're like wandering. It's not even seeing the shows, but it's like wandering around backstage and running into people that you haven't seen in a really, really long time.
Like, hey, Spoon, how's it going?
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Hey, Common.
And there's this sense of, there's this sense of a world that other musicians can relate to, that, you know, you've kind of have been all these sort of like ups and downs and common history that you've had, and you know they've had the same shitty experiences, and you know they've had the same really exciting experiences that just feels really warm and fuzzy somehow when you're running into your friends.
It's like our church.
Yeah.
We have
absolutely.
They all feel the same pain.
But yeah, so that we met then and then continued to work together. Well, I mean, I sang on Together.
Yeah.
And
right.
you sang on Wake and Be Fine when we performed on Jimmy Fallon.
That's right.
Which I had forgotten all about, by the way, until you mentioned it.
Which
when
was
we were sang backstage.
Yeah. It's funny. We were just. I was talking about it at least.
Yeah, you mentioned
how terrifying it is to be on TV.
Yeah.
And if you guys know Wake and Be Fine, it has many lyrics.
Yeah.
And I had to sing, like, I think about 2/3 of it, and I tried so hard. Like, I was backstage for like an hour just singing it, and I still couldn't do it. I still needed a cheat sheet.
Yeah, I remember that really, really well. The thing, we were saying this thing, it's like, God, it's like a rule about life.
How disappointed you were?
Well, no, I remember that you were freaked out by the lyrics, and I always feel guilty about that. And anytime anybody joins my band, And I'm like, they're like, oh my God, there's a lot of lyrics. I'm always just like, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. And they're like, there's really no set form to this either. You kind of like.
Yeah, the phrasing is really weird. I can't remember it now, but some of those songs are.
I do think subliminally I'm trying to torture people sometimes. It's like I'm working out childhood aggressions
just on the off
on my
chance,
band members.
just on the off chance that somebody you hate has to sing it. Just make it difficult. And finally, you got the chance. With me.
But that's, I mean, so then we did that, and I think it's actually culminated in the fact that we are actually now living. We are actually living in the cottage on Carl's property now. So all I had to do was walk across the lawn to ask you whether or not you would interested in doing it.
Because like a lot of people, everybody's trying to escape New York, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Like Joan Didion. You're like goodbye to all that, and sometimes you can stay too long at the party.
Yes.
And my wife and I just really wanted Will and Beth to come up to Woodstock, so we said, well, we've got this cottage, which sounds fancier than it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like it's not a big deal to have a cottage in Woodstock. It's not like, it's next to our stables or anything.
Yeah.
It's just
yeah. You go to, it's just the dignity of not being in New York. This thing of like, oh my God, like I don't have to like be rude and shitty to people around me just to get through my day.
It's true. And also my 6-year-old son absolutely adores Will.
Oh yeah.
Which is pretty awesome. Like they have a day at school where it's like grandparents' day or special person's day. And he was like, so who do you want to, Will? He was like, but Will's on tour.
I know.
So he cried. He's still crying.
You know that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Aww.
It's the first thing in his life that I think taught him about disappointment. So that's a good lesson. Thank you for teaching him that. You don't always get what you want.
Yeah, I aim to disappoint.
Sometimes you get hurt by people. People that love you. People that you love. But no. But no, it's funny. We have had to deal with some like actual kind of landlord bullshit in the last day. Like,
yeah. Oh my God.
It's not that gross, but it's sort of gross.
Yeah.
It's just a leaky pipe.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know, just getting out of New York City, which was like something that is actually really, really weirdly hard to do. I think that bringing it into the record, it was like when I wrote that song, Don't Move Back to LA, it was like, that was because some other friends of ours had moved out, had kind of in a big domino effect, all moved out of New York at the same time and gone to LA. And it felt like a personal betrayal. It was like, why are you leaving me here? With like very little announcement in advance. You're just suddenly going away. And now I have to be here all alone. And I was just like, oh, don't move back to LA. And then I was like, oh, I feel this is so painful. And I bet if I just sing a song right now,
it just slowly morphed into
song.
Singing. You just kept saying it until it became a song.
Yeah. I mean, and the song started out as like, I was like, all I really need to do is just sing the words Don't Move Back to LA for 5 minutes. And it would probably be like a pretty good song. Mm-hmm. And then I have to put some other stuff in too. But secretly, I think what I was doing was also kind of saying to myself, because that's the narrator of that song is more like, no, just join me in the shitty hell that is New York. Mm-hmm. Don't make your life better, be in the bad life.
Do you think is there some bigger metaphor, like New York and LA? Like they represent such.
Well, I mean, part of what I was experiencing
things.
is, as a kid who comes from New Hampshire, there's this thing where I grew up in New Hampshire, and it's not a fun place for a young person, but it's also beautiful. And I knew when I was a kid, I was like, I want to get out. I got to get out. But I also wasn't like, I don't ever want to come back. This place is terrible. I had a vision of coming back. But the thing is, in order for it to be a place where like young people can be or artists can be, like somebody's got to start moving back. Some people who are young I've got, and you know, as a person in a small town, I remember this like New Yorker article that I read last year about this, where they were talking about, you know, what happens in the towns where people leave or where people don't leave, and it gets into sort of the political, where there becomes this sort of brain drain, and there's these really beautiful places where all of the young people and all the energetic people left, and there's a sense of like, well, you know, we want the young people to go spread their wings and fly, but now that they've gone away, our town is sort of like drained of its vitality. And I think that's sort of how those things fall prey to ignorance and anger and Fox News and things like that. And you look at New Hampshire specifically, because I look at New Hampshire specifically because New Hampshire hasn't been very friendly to the arts or anything like that. They've had a really sort of like libertarian, like, you know, we're not going to give you anything extra kind of attitude, which is part of the reason why Vermont is so much more exciting seeming to people. And so I think on some level that song is kind of about like, gosh, like if you stayed in your town and made it cooler, the whole country would be cooler. But I'm also aware that that's kind of like a naive philosophy. But I think maybe that's a little bit of what's in that song too.
But that, yeah, that's the cost of leaving.
Yeah.
You know, that brings up something we were talking about. Like, do you think you had any choice? Like, do you think you had to leave New Hampshire, or, you know, did your destiny as a musician, you know, preclude any free will?
Carl told me before he did this interview that he was going to ask me about predestination versus free will. And I thought it was a joke.
I think it's a legit question.
I don't know. I don't know. My town, my whole state is in the news once every 4 years when there's like primaries and people cast the first vote there, and otherwise people don't really ever think about it. And I remember like going to college in St. Paul, Minnesota, and in the first week there was some weird shooting or something that happened. But I just remember being so startled that a place I lived in was in the newspaper. It's really, really funny to me how much when I remember my childhood, it seems like I was on an island made out of trees and dirt, and somewhere out there, in theory, there was a world that was where people did things. And it's crazy to me that I ended up being a small part of that world, you know, that people wrote about me and talked about me, because I felt so much like I was just a speck of dust. But
you think you could have stayed there?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing, because some of my friends who stayed there, it didn't go really super well for them. You know, I mean, I remember having friends where I was like, "You're not gonna leave," and I feel like I can see your whole future, you know, in that, and it was really sad. You know what I mean, in a way, because. I don't know. Yeah, I think that you have to go. I mean, so it's kind of, that's why I say it's like, I know it's a fantasy. It's like, sometimes people have to get the hell out of where, you know, you go on tour sometimes and like, you'll play like Rapid City or Spearfish, and these really amazing kids will come up to you and they'll be like, "Oh my God, you're my favorite band," some 18-year-old kid, and they're giving you a hug. I love you so much. And you're like, "Thank you. Get out of this town. Go very far away from here."
I know it's such a common thing, the people who apologize for their city.
Yeah.
It's like, "I'm so sorry about it." But not here. That's why you come here.
Yeah, I was in Dallas, and it was a really weird show, and I was talking to a friend there about how I don't think any band has ever had a non-weird show in Dallas. And he said, "People in Dallas just don't know how to listen to music." You know? And it was like, but he said it like he wasn't joke, like he was just like, yeah, like almost like it was like you're just saying, "Well, it's really humid here." You know what I mean? It was sort of like that. But anyway.
But you also realize it's hard to give a city a personality. You know?
Like you're saying it's sort of like an invented thing.
Like you think a city is like this freewheeling city where everybody loves you, and then you come back 2 years later and realize, no, they've changed because
Yeah.
because it's a different group of people, and why wouldn't they change?
Yeah, Portland, Oregon. That's for some reason happened to me. But
Something bad happened in Portland?
No, but that happened with our audience where it was like they cooled, like it was weird. I mean, they're still, but like, or there's like places where it was like we would go to and play for nobody, and then suddenly we were suddenly popular there again. And this is something I always wonder about, because I'm sure that you have, your cities that you play where you do really, really well, and your cities that you play where you do really, really poorly. And so, not really, really poorly, but like not as well. And so
there are some really, really poor ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I always think, I'll say to people, oh, well, you can't have a good show in like what this or that town, or like, it's amazing if you go to Chicago, you're amazing. And I think, no, this is about a certain subset of the people in this town at that particular moment in their lives, who care about my band. You know what I mean? It's just like a sort of I just make these assumptions that I know.
So
about
what
places.
town was the hardest nut to crack? What was the town that you felt like didn't like you initially, but then they came to love you?
Portland, yeah. Yeah, we used to go play Portland and always play for nobody and always get a chilly reception. And then suddenly we went and we played this pizza parlor and everybody loved us, but it was small. And then we came back, and every time we played in Portland, there would be people like hanging from the ceiling, screaming so loud that you felt like your eardrums were going to explode. And then like one day we came back, and it was like suddenly there weren't that many people anymore, and people were just kind of like, it's pretty good. I was like, where did all the people that loved us go?
Wow, so you've been through a full 360 with Portland.
Yeah, but now things are like, Portland is likes us again. But for a while there,
I was going to ask you which city turned on you, but it was Portland.
Yeah,
it's all Portland.
I have like complicated feelings about Portland.
It's a fascinating city.
Yeah. But anyway, what's that for you? What's like your what's a tough nut to crack?
A legendary city is San Diego.
Oh yeah.
Like I remember playing there many times, and when you finally have a good show in San Diego, that's when you think, we've got something here. Like, I think we're going to be popular. There are 60 people here.
Yeah.
In San Diego.
Yeah, San Diego's.
They're clapping.
The other thing that we talked about is, I don't know if I've talked to you about this, but like, I always feel bad for whatever market comes after New York City on the tour, because it's always the same thing where it's like the band comes to town, they go to a bar, the bar closes the doors, they're drinking until 6 a.m., somebody breaks out some shitty cocaine, they get in at like 10 a.m. to their wherever they're staying, and then they like go to the next day, they go to like Baltimore or Philly or DC, and they're just like, bah.
We've had the same experience, because like, that exact experience.
And if you're on tour with somebody and you see them the next day and you're like, oh man, he looks rough,
But it's a weird thing when we both moved to New York, and when you start here, it just ruins you. Like all of a sudden, that night is gone. Like all of a sudden that night where you would party till 6 a.m. in New York is, well, I'm gonna go back to my apartment. You guys just do whatever you're gonna do. I'm just gonna go pet my dog or something. And then you go to all the other cities and you go, yeah, it's okay. Chicago's nice, yeah. San Francisco's cool, I guess. I live in fucking New York.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean,
then you have to get the hell out.
I had to get the hell out because it was more personal for me. Some people draw energy from New York and it makes them alive and they're really, really excited about it. And like, that is amazing and they should be here. For me, I always just felt like I was getting the life sucked out of me, but not because, that's because of who I am. You know what I mean? It's like the way that I'm wired. I felt like New York was making demands on me that it's just like so hard to do the simplest thing, you know, just like to wake up and get your guitar somewhere by a time and then be, you know, even today, like getting this thing, it's just so hard. And I would leave town because I was writing a lot upstate, you know, like I have places that have been able to go and do writing and really focus on writing. And I remember there's like a Proust quote that I remember reading where he's saying, you know, the voice that gives you inspiration, it's like a tiny whisper. And so if you're not paying attention, or if you sort of think, yeah, I'll remember that later or whatever, you won't, you know, you will miss that little tiny whisper. That's certainly true for me. Maybe for other people it's a big bullhorn, but not for me. It's a tiny little whisper. And so I would go out of town and I would hunker down and I would write, and, you know, my whole life was just like writing and cooking and like taking a walk. And it was like healing and regenerative and beautiful. And then I would come back into New York, and before I had even gotten out of my car, somebody had like flipped me off or spit on my car or like almost hit me in their car. You know, it was just like this thing of like New York immediately tells you like, I hate you, you know, like immediately upon showing up. And I'm just overly sensitive, and some people are just like, whatever, who cares?
But the other side of it is like, I was just next door, the Forbidden Planet, and you go in there, and there's like men and women, every age, like all races, and they're all just buying like Doom Patrol comics or like buying
really
action
cool.
figures, and I was like, oh, I love this place.
Yeah.
Like where else would you have this?
Yes. Yeah. No. That's
like it's kind of one of my favorite places in New York, because you walk around and I think, I didn't know this existed. This doesn't exist anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beautiful draw of cities, you know, coming back to the New York, LA media, big centers of places. And in Austin was like that in Texas, where it was like everybody who was not a good old boy basically goes to Austin. And it's a beautiful thing. But then sometimes you're like, well, God, if they stayed and they were like, no, fuck you, this is my town too. Then maybe it would be cool, but maybe not. I don't know.
And then on the other side of it, my wife, when I was in the nerd store, I was talking to my wife on the phone, and she was at a birthday party upstate, and she said, "This place is so Trumpy." It's like she said that it was a kid's birthday party, and there were people with the red MAGA hats, and I realized, like, oh yeah, like, you know, Woodstock is nice. You know, it's a nice bubble in the bubble, but you're surrounded by. So we can't. We're just fucked. We can't. Yeah, it's you can't get away from it. Life comes after you.
Yeah, well, that's why I feel like it's important personally. Well, I mean, it seems to me like it would be good to be integrated with people like that, so that you could at least be like showing. I don't know. So you could at least be showing people that they're not. I don't know. It seems like the bubble model is not working, I guess, is maybe more what I'd want to say. Yeah.
Should we switch gears or something?
Yeah, let's switch gears.
Wait, here's
Oh no, you already knew that joke. Never mind.
Not a lot of people know this, but Will made a record called Love Streams.
Yeah.
Just under the name Love Streams, and it was only recently that I realized it never came out.
Yeah.
And like I thought of it as an album that people knew and had been released, but it hadn't been. And there's a connection. I mean, not more a vague connection, but. Well,
an early version of Famous Tracheotomies was on that, but what's really interesting about Love Streams, gosh, I don't even know how germane this is to the discussion, but it actually feels very sort of related to the spirit of it. In 2011 or earlier, I can't remember, but I started making this record that was like drum machines and synths and no acoustic anything, and was sort of my crash course in teaching myself how to record. But it was also kind of like attempting to come up with a different style of writing. And it never came out for a lot of really complicated reasons. It started out as something I was just making for myself, and then it had a couple of different botched rollout things where it didn't come out. But it's weirdly been this sort of mulch for all of the other records that I did afterwards. I mean, the Silver Gymnasium was basically like a sort of was like an attempt to sort of integrate some of what I'd learned from that style of writing and some of the instrumentation into Okkervil River. And right after I did Away, I worked on it more. It's kind of like something that every now and then I'll like work on it more, and even though it's already mastered now.
It's just like the car in your garage.
Yeah.
Like the '68 Mustang you're tinkering on in your garage.
Yeah. And I've mastered it several times too, which is ridiculous. But in any case, even after Away, which was this like totally acoustic based record, I went right back in and continued to make all of this super synthy stuff for that record again. And I think maybe in the Rainbow Rain it represents.
It comes out in this record.
Yeah, I think it represents a sort of a the spirit of Love Streams, like actually finally like embodying itself in Okkervil River.
That's the thing. Like I think I see the connection there, but I don't know, nobody else would because they haven't heard the record.
Yeah.
And you would see the connection because you've also heard the record.
Yeah. It's a weird thing, having a thing that's like your weird secret.
It's your basement tapes.
Yeah. That like
it's
that
a
never.
It's a classic move to have the lost record so people can discover it.
Yeah, but that came out after a while eventually.
What, you think this won't?
Yeah, maybe at some point.
You might have to die.
I'll put it out. Yeah.
But that's how it usually
But yes, but it sounds like that to you, right? It feels like it's like that. It feels like it comes out of that spirit or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It was
Here's a question about me for you. Do you feel like the record sounds, how do you feel like it's related to Away? Does it feel really different?
Wait, you're not supposed to ask me.
I know,
this
but
question.
I'm asking you because I feel like I don't know the answer to that question.
I don't know if it is. Yeah, I see the connection between this record and Love Streams, but Away just seemed like more of your Astral Weeks or something like that.
Yeah. But it's, to me, they feel really similar. I guess that's why I asked you that. But like when I listen to them, they don't sound similar. But it's like we
have no perspective on things we do.
No, I know.
And I have no perspective on things you do. So I was a bad person to choose to interview you.
Sorry.
I just love you too much. You're too close to me.
Well, that's so nice. Yeah, I mean, it's that record. What's funny about In the Rainbow Rain was that it was the exact same workflow. I mean, we made it the same way as we made Away, but the only difference was Away was like me alone hiring a bunch of strangers to play on my record, and feeling very free. People describe that record as sounding sad, but to me it sounds like I'm just sort of free to do what I want and to exist in a world where maybe the other stuff doesn't even have to have existed. And then all those people that were just strangers that I hired, they became like my band. And we went on the road and we were like, well, we can't bring all of this acoustic stuff, so let's just bring like more electric stuff. And then suddenly it was so fun to play with people and we were having such a good time and everybody was so happy that the music became happier and the music was more electric. And I just thought, let's just record this feeling right away immediately. And I booked a date, and then the election happened right before the recording session. Well, like 2 weeks before. And like, I got off tour and there were 2 weeks. And so I felt this weird feeling of feeling so happy and grounded and satisfied in my life, but also feeling like so terrified about the larger world. And so there was this sense of trying to write something that was like strong, strengthening, and uplifting, that people could kind of carry with them and that would make them feel happy. But we went in and we did the record the same way as Away. So I feel like it's really just, I've come to this thing of like, if you're happy and you're walking down the street, you'll walk down the street in a happy way. Or if you're happy and you're like juggling or whatever, I guess you can't juggle in a sad way, but
you can also,
maybe you can.
You can tell that you became very much a band. On the record. Like you said, Away, it was, going back to Astral Weeks, it's like Van Morrison just brought in guys who didn't know the songs and they were just hot shit players and they made this great record. And this one, like, I hesitate to use the term 70s, but it feels 70s not in that it like touches on any tropes or cliches. It just has that vibe where like bands were just really good in the 70s.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was a time where bands were good and players were amazing and the technology was great, but computers hadn't come in yet.
Mhm.
And so, which I like computers, but there's a tendency, it's really, really easy to give your song like a facelift or like airbrush it. I mean, it's hard not to. The tools are so there and so easy that it's like you're kind of shunted into fixing things that weren't mistakes.
Mhm.
And I think that's something I try hard to avoid. But also I was thinking about, what are the things that are I wanted to make a record that felt uplifting and that made people feel not alone and that made people feel not ashamed and things like that. And I was thinking, what are the things that make me feel that way? And for me, I guess that is like soul music and like AM radio rock from the 70s.
Yeah.
And those, like, if I hear like a Rhodes, like it just makes me feel like a warm pat on the back or something,
Yeah, like what's the one? Shelter Song.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you guys all heard the record?
I guess they're streaming on NPR,
We're
but they
in
just
2018. Hasn't everybody?
but
heard it already?
they're all owners of the record.
But yeah,
now, so.
Shelter Song really struck me as.
That's like my favorite one on there, I think. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's my
So-
favorite recording on there.
So here's the question: why did you put it at song 7 or song 8?
Well, because I sequenced the record so that you get Famous Tracheotomies is like sort of like a run through of a lot of the themes on the record, and it also feels like it belongs first. And I feel like The Dream and the Light is like coughing up a big hairball, where it's just sort of like, it's like the repository for all the sense of betrayal and anger and pain and confusion on the record. And there's a certain sense of like reaching out for something. And then the record kind of goes more and more, like it's getting lighter as it's going, like, in fact, there's fewer words, for the first time in ever, I was thinking I will really want to challenge myself to write songs with like a song with like 40 words that are all one syllable and they're just things that you find around the house, and that comes in the second half. So you get these pretty verbose songs in the first 3.
Was that
and
Pull Up
then
the Ribbons? Was that one of those?
Pulled Up the Ribbon is, that's definitely very, very simple language. So I definitely, I feel like you're shedding weight as it's going. And Shelter Song feels like it's getting at a place of forgiving yourself to a certain extent. And so it felt like it was better in the second half.
So you talk about the narrative arc. Like,
Yeah.
all these narrative arcs, and you mentioned Proust, and we're in the rare book room. So I mean, like, and people have talked to you and called you the hyper-literate songwriter. I mean, like, do you like that, or does it bug you?
Well, I've thought about it a whole lot. And I guess I like that anybody ever said anything nice about me. I think that maybe sometimes it's a barrier if you think, oh, this is just going to be like a smarty pants guy. But I guess the thing that, if I were to say it bugs me, it makes me feel ungrateful to say that it bugs me. But sometimes people will say, well, your song, the lyrics are so good, it's like poetry, or it's like a short story or something, and which was really, really nice to say. But I guess that what makes me sad about it is that it feels like there's an implication that when something is better than a song, it's a poem. And I feel like...
What?
Don't you feel like people say you're...
I don't get that at all.
You think they think... You
what?
think...
Wait, say that again?
If like you're... Okay, so it's like... It feels like it's like a superlative. Like, it's so good, it's poetry, as opposed to like, it's a great song.
Wow, you're really reading deep into that.
Well, so,
And
but
you
I
take
mean...
that as an insult somehow?
This is what I feel, and it goes back to the thing that we were talking about with knowing other musicians and loving other musicians. I feel like song shouldn't be second fiddle to other arts. I feel like it's the first art. I think, you could say song or cave painting, but like you need something to write on the wall of a cave, and you just need your voice to make a song. And so it feels to me like song birthed poems and birthed the novel and birthed all of these things. So to me, I feel like I feel like it's not like slumming to be a writer. I feel like a songwriter. I feel like it's like this really, really amazing art form. And I feel like you see this prejudice even in like writers like, which I recently found out that I didn't know that like William Blake was writing his stuff as songs, like songs of experience, songs of innocence. Like he literally was singing those songs. They all had melodies, and you'd go over to his house and he would sing you the songs, and then he would write the lyrics down in the book. And I also didn't know like Sappho was a songwriter. She accompanied herself on Lyre, and she was like a singer-songwriter. And I feel like that's I feel like it says something about our culture that we sort of, granted, you know, stuff gets lost to time, but the fact that we kind of like carved the music away, and we're just like, no, it's serious. So like it's like writing. It's not like songs.
But on the upside, you can get super famous and rich writing songs, but not so much writing poetry.
Yeah.
So who cares if you're more respected as a poet?
Yeah.
I don't want to be a poet.
I just think that I just feel like there's something about song that's really, really primal and gorgeous and glorious. And I guess I just feel like honored that, God, sometimes, you know, I was like driving from Woodstock to the Pulled Up the Ribbon video shoot, and I had to leave really, really, really early. And there was a guy riding his bike at like 5 a.m. in the total dark coming towards me, this one headlight, and I was really freaked out. But then I was just sitting there after he passed, I was listening to music, and I was just thinking, what is it about music? Like there's this thing, I don't even understand why we need it so much, like vibrations in the air and with somebody singing, but there's like a thing in it that feels so meaningful and deep and touches something so deep and icky and like central to who I am, and not who I am, but like just being an animal in a body with a brain, you know, like it feels really like it's hitting the deepest part of me, and there's some spirit behind it that I don't even understand.
Yeah, you didn't have a choice.
But what, pardon?
You didn't have a choice.
Yeah. Oh, you're bringing it back to predestination?
Yes.
But I was just thinking, I just like want to be a part of this. Like I'm honored that I got to be a part of it, you know, like even if it's in a footnote way in the grand sweep or something, like I'm so glad I got to like sit at that like little table for a second with, you know, with the other people. You know what I mean? I don't know. It makes me really happy to think about.
Well, it's like I said, you know, like you made your mark. Who cares? Who cares what happens next? You know, you left your mark on the world.
This is something that
it's a quote from somebody else, but I don't want to name.
But you've told me this several times now, because we stay up and you know talk about. There's a lot to talk about because we've both been in bands for a really long time and experienced a lot of the same things and frustrations and exaltations and things and overthinking. And I'm more overthinky than you, I think. I think you're more at peace with some things than I am sometimes.
I think I just keep it hidden.
Maybe.
I just scream into my pillow, whereas you talk about it.
Yeah, that might be the case.
Don't actually do that.
Okay. Well, are we winding down? Is there anything more that you want to...
What else is there?
I don't really know.
Does anybody have a question? Not a Q&A.
Oh, yeah.
Per se.
We're told that we were advised to not do questions because there was some thing about the energy going back and forth in the room that I think was actually a good point. But anyway, so no questions.
We
talk.
What? Does that mean you should play some songs?
Yeah, I'll play some songs.
I think we did it. We've done this enough.
All right. That was great. So I'm not going to amplify, so I'll just do my best to project. This is the first song on the record. When I had my tracheotomy, I was blue and it stopped breathing. There was something wrong with me. Doctors cut through the cartilage and skin at the bottom of my throat, and then they snaked that trach tube in. And I was 1.5. I was my parents' only kid, and they'd lost 2 before that. And growing up, I always knew how close I'd come. Well, that must have been scary, Mom. Gary Coleman, he was Arnold on TV, and I grew up watching him and Conrad, Bain and Kimberly. Turns out that he had a trach scar too, where they cut into his throat and then they threaded that tube through. But that was much later on, in the year that he turned 40, when his fan base was all gone, and his health was so touch and go. His girlfriend proposed, but they broke up on a TV show. Mary Wells, she was known as Motown's queen, but laryngeal cancer left her unable to sing. They tried radiation and multiple surgeries, but she didn't have insurance and lost almost everything. Poor thing. But Diana Ross helped with the bills. Aretha Franklin tried her very best to help out Mary Wells. And Dionne Warwick did all she could do, and Mary Wells, she pulled through. For 1 more year or 2. Dylan Thomas looked completely pale and weak on a trip to New York City to promote his poetry. And after 3 straight days of drinking out in Greenwich and Chelsea, he was taken to the hospital, turned blue and not breathing. And Catelyn Thomas said, when she walked into St. Vincent's, is the bloody man dead yet? Later that day, she got so drunk she was restrained, and her husband slipped away. Ray Davies had a tracheotomy. He was at St. Thomas Hospital in London, age 13. And during his long recovery, nurses put him in a wheelchair and they'd wheel him out onto a balcony. And down that evening, sun did sink, painting London and the river and that freaked out future king. Waterloo lit up for one sick kid, and at 23 he recorded a song about it. is a song from the record that's a lot more fast tempo and rock and roll on the record, but it began its life in a more waltz time, and so this arrangement sort of reflects that. 70 out. You got a bigger house. I know you sold it now in your place out in LA, my baby. I'm gonna send this out to Mistress Mike. She knows who she is and what I like. I'm gonna send this out to Susan Sneed. I'm gonna say a 30 rosaries. I'm gonna tell her don't move back to LA. Don't get your license back. Don't cut your intake back. Don't move back to LA. You think it's bad? It's actually worse out in LA, my baby. 'Cause those West Coast cats, they're gonna chew you up and spit you out. They're gonna waste your time and watch you drown. You say I lost my soul, I sold it out, but I told you, I warned you, I told you, I warned you, I told you now. In 2 more weeks, I'll drop this drag, and you can have your New York City back. But I'll send this out to Space Camp Ship. Yes, I'm living on the ocean's left, and I will send this to Aloha Crest. You might not agree, but I'll insist. And I will tell them don't move back to LA. I said don't move back to LA. You got a Midwest song, so sing it out. You got a Deep South song, so sing it out. You got a mountain song, so sing it out. I got an East Coast song, now sing it out. I won't move back to LA, my baby. You got a Peach State song, Pine Tree State song, Wolverine State song, so sing it out, fight it out, sing it out. Oh. Manual fade. Well, I forgot my harmonica for this song, but I'll do it. This is the last song on the record. It's hard to be a human being, just needing, seeking, feeling pain from things you can't articulate, and dodging blame and to open up your heart and face the fact that you could fail and show the world what you don't know, and let your long-held high ground go, so you get cold and act apart. I get it, though it's hard. A human being was shaped by God. It's just an ache with changes made. It crowds the earth, it takes and takes, just like a play. But still there's good, or even great. Can we escape? Is it too late? And I've got nothing smart to say to wrap it up, to come to close. I hardly see beyond my nose, and I've got no idea of what you've been through or had to do, or rose above. But brother, I believe in love. One more and then I'll sign things. All eyes turning, no one to see, all the keynote waiting for me, just the shoreline receding, torn ticket in my hand. I'm thinking, wish I didn't have it, 'cause who says sailing is fine? Leaving behind all the fancies that I might replace if I tried on that long ride, looking deep inside. But I don't want to look too deep inside. Kids, sit down on crowd way by. But it might not be another town farther down the line. Look out at each town that glides by. And there's another crowd to drown and crying eye. And see how that light she loved now just won't shine. Well, that might just be another star, but it's high and far in some other sky. We sing, is that marionette real enough yet to step up on that set, to decide what a dance might be, to end, ruining the play, to in the ensuing melee escape me, packed up all of our bags. The ship's deck now sags from the weight of our tracks as we pace beneath flags black and battered, rattling our swords in service of some faded foreign lord. And Jonathan sings, we sail out on order from him, but we find the maps he sent to us don't mention lost coastlines, where nothing we've actually seen has been mapped or outlined, where we don't recognize the names on strange signs. And every night finds us rocking and rolling on waves wild and wide. Well, we have lost our way. Nobody's gonna say it outright. So we just go la 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 la. We just go la 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 la.